Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. These are the stories of those who have received, given, and who are waiting for the gift of life, organ transplantation. Now here's your host and heart and kidney recipient, BJ Odom.
Welcome to the Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast, where we explore the extraordinary world of organ transplantation. Each week we share inspiring stories and introduce you to remarkable individuals sharing their own transplant stories. Be sure to support the podcast by leaving a 5-star review and subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. Have a transplant story to share or have comments about the podcast? We would love to hear from you. Just email us, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to connect with us on Facebook, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. This is BJ Odom, you know, the guy with more parts than a chicken nugget. My new book, packed with laughs, heart, and the unbelievable true story of survival you've heard me talk about right here on the Gift of Life Podcast. Get your copy today, More Parts Than a Chicken Nugget, available on Amazon. As we welcome you to episode 118. This week's episode is one that will truly touch your heart. As we meet Roxy Staricha, a mother whose life changed forever during a 20-week pregnancy scan. What followed was a journey filled with fear, faith, surgeries, and hope as her son Lennox faced incredible medical battles, starting just days after his birth, from open heart surgery to the need of a partial heart transplant. This is a powerful story of a mother's love, a child's strength, and the miracles that can happen even in the darkest moments. We'll meet Roxy coming in next. Roxy, welcome to the show today. And of course, I really appreciate you for sharing Lennox's story. But before we get started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Hi. Thank you again for having me. My name is Roxy Staricha. I am Lennox Staricha's mother, and I live currently in Minnesota, and I have 2 boys of my own, a 2-year-old named DeLuca, and Lennox is 9 months old now. And then I also have a bonus child son who is 14 named Rowan. So I live with all boys with me and my husband. Thankfully, my dog is a female, though. So I've got a little bit of female. Yeah. We've been talking about possibly going for a third together and praying for a girl at that point so we can really just get a good mix in the household. But currently, I live with all boys. So it is what it is.
And tell us a little bit about Lennox before we get into Lennox's story, if you would.
Yes. So just to kind of summarize it before we get into all of the details, Lennox was born with a couple different heart conditions resulting in what's called a partial heart transplant, which was brand new in 2022. That started over at Duke University. So it's a very new transplant procedure, and he ended up being the 54th in the whole world to get the transplant. Wow. So it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Now, you said partial transplant. Mm-hmm. So if you could explain that a little bit more for me and the audience, because this is this is new for me. I'll tell you right now.
Yes. It was definitely new for us as well. And it's new for the whole hospital and the whole state. And everything. He was actually the first one in Minnesota and the whole upper Midwest to have it done. So, and then, like I said, 54th in the whole world. But essentially, this is what I have gathered as information hearing from the doctors and doing some research, and this is just how I interpret it to be. So, well,
that'll be the best way anyway, because
I was like, it's not going to be very medical. Yeah. So hearts that don't fully qualify for a full transplant, like donor hearts, but they still have working valves or some working tissue, they're now utilizing those working valves and working tissue to donate just those pieces of the heart into other babies. So actually partial heart transplants can help more than one baby even. And some people even get a full transplant, and it's kind of like a domino effect. They get a full transplant, but they still had working pieces of their heart that needed to be replaced. And then their heart can donate some partial pieces into the next heart. So it can like have a whole domino effect as well.
Wow. Now this is interesting.
Yeah. And the cool part about it and why families choose this option is the tissue is supposed to grow with the child. So eliminating future need for surgeries and open heart surgeries.
Now, how about anti-rejection drugs? Will that be a lifetime thing for Lennox as far as you know right now or not?
Yes, as of today, yes. And it's a lower dose than what there is for a full transplant patient. Right now, we're actually in the middle of adjusting that dosage because of the possible rejection that is happening with him right now. But yes, as of today, rejection meds are needed, and there is still a lot of study that's going into that.
Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, so where did Lennox's story begin?
Yes, this all started at my 20-week anatomy scan ultrasound back in April of 2025. I went to my anatomy scan completely alone, and I was actually completely at peace because I had no fear, no worry, no reason to think that anything could actually go wrong. DeLuca's only 18 months. There's only an 18-month difference between the two boys. So, I mean, I was just recently pregnant, had a happy, healthy baby. So I just thought it was another routine checkup for me, and life was normal. But instead, my whole world changed forever that day. And partway through the ultrasound, I could feel the whole energy in the room shift. And the tech who I was talking to consistently got more quiet. There was a lot of pictures being taken. We hadn't even I think we were like an hour and a half in, and we hadn't even moved off the heart yet. So I didn't see like the cute pictures of his head and hands and feet and all the normal things you see at the anatomy scan. And as a mom, I was just like kind of sitting there, like trying not to get worried. Honestly, I didn't even know like what are all the possibilities of things that could be wrong. So I wasn't even completely worried at this time. And the tech started talking to me about what I thought she was saying was like the things that she looks for in general, but she was actually explaining what she was seeing in Lennox's heart. But she was trying to explain why she was taking so long in the heart, but it didn't actually click to me until I met with the doctor after the ultrasound, and the doctor sat me down and then explained everything that was going on and what they saw in the pictures. So what they had said is that he has transposition of the great arteries, a VSD, and pulmonary valve stenosis. So transposition of the great arteries just means that his aorta and pulmonary valve were not flipped into the positions that they're supposed to be. So essentially his body is pulling and pumping blood incorrectly, oxygenated blood versus non-oxygenated blood incorrectly throughout his body. And the VSD, which is actually a hole in the lower chambers of his heart, is actually kind of like God's way of promoting mixing of the oxygen and non-oxygenated blood naturally. So that's kind of nice. That's like kind of what's keeping him alive, essentially, while in utero. And then the pulmonary valve stenosis just means like the valve is a little bit smaller and pressure is increased in that valve itself.
That must have been quite the undertaking for you because like you said, you were just thinking everything was normal and you went by yourself and then you had to hear that news. So what was the plan? Did they give you a plan then, or did they need to think about it for a while?
That was actually, so because of my age, I was meeting with maternal fetal medicine. So they weren't actually like his doctors. They were just there to do my ultrasounds and kind of watch the pregnancy due to my age. So they didn't have any further information besides that I'm going to have a lot more appointments coming up and that we're going to have to see a cardiac team and there's going to be surgeries, and everything that I thought was going to be our experience with having our second child was like gone out the window. And it was a very terrifying and sad moment. A lot of emotions came very quickly with being by myself and getting this information. It's like you hear most of it, but some of it just kind of like went out in one ear, out the other. And I remember breaking down pretty hard and trying to ask questions that I thought were important, but they didn't have a lot of answers for me at that time. And I went into the car and I called my husband and I tried to reiterate everything that I just heard, but I was crying so hard. And we just kind of had to begin our grieving process of the normal experience we thought we were going to have. And then we had to learn to, while we were loving him, to also learn to fight for him. And that's when his battle and everything kind of began. And from there, we went into lots of appointments. I mean, they were looking at his heart pretty much like every other week at this point. The further I got in my pregnancy, the more and more of the appointments increased.
Now, I have heard them doing surgeries in the womb. Was that ever brought up, or what was basically, when did they give you a battle plan, or did they give you a battle plan in the beginning?
Yeah. So once we met with an actual cardiac doctor and the cardiac team, we went to Children's Masonic in Minnesota. Once we started meeting with that team, then we developed a plan. And the plan, because he had natural mixing of the blood already, he did not need to have surgery while in utero. So the plan was within the first week of life that he was going to have surgery.
And what surgery was that? Was that the transposition surgery then, or was that the transplant surgery, or the partial transplant?
Yes, good question, because that changed a lot in our plans. So, well, I'll start with, so the first day of life, they had said, so like they can only see so much when he's still in my stomach. So they're like, we kind of have an idea of what we're looking at, but we're going to know more once he's actually born. And so they're like, the first thing they wanted to check for was the size of the VSD opening and to determine how much mixing was actually happening of his blood to determine whether they had to put in another hole in his heart to increase the mixing. So that was the first surgery we were mentally preparing for. That I was having a C-section for this one, that they might be taking him immediately. Sorry for that. I got interrupted in my office, so I had to shoo him out.
Not a problem.
So, I was like, get out. So we were fully prepared for that possibility that we were not going to be able to like hang out with him and see him on day of life. And the plan was within the first week of life, he was going to have what's called an arterial switch operation, in which they would have went in and just literally switched his aorta and pulmonary valves into the correct spots that they were supposed to be. And with doing that, they would be using frozen tissue, which would not grow with his body. And so like every 4 to 6 years, we would need to do another surgery to increase the size of his valves. So that was like the original plan going into birth.
That had to be scary alone, let alone knowing my poor child's going to have surgery after surgery after surgery.
Yes, it turned into a lot of research, a lot of questions, a million appointments, reaching out to as many people as we possibly could. We joined Facebook groups, like we loaded up our village, and we wanted to have as much knowledge as we could. And we had 20 weeks to do it, right? So we had 20 weeks to prepare, 20 weeks to ask questions at the doctors, 20 weeks to share with friends and family. And then we had him on August 20th in 2025. And sure enough, he did end up needing that ASD procedure done. So they ended up popping a hole in the upper chambers of his heart to increase that mixing. And this is where our first unexpected tragedy happened, that after, when he was recovering from the ASD, his blood pressure completely dropped. And I remember it was the first time, because I had a C-section, I had to do my recovery first before they would let me go down and see him and be with him. And I was just walking up to his room, and like 15 to 20 doctors were rushing into his room. And I broke down again. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And my husband's like, I didn't want you to come down right now. This is a bad time. And they were very good. I mean, Children's Masonic, the doctors and nurses there, like, applause. I don't think I went 4 minutes without one of the doctors checking in on us, asking if we're okay, if we have any questions, explaining what's happening, that they got everything under control. This is what they're looking for and what they're watching. And it was just so hard to see him like that because, he's intubated. He is not like crying and making noises. And it was very scary just listening to all of the machines beep and make noises around you.
Can only imagine. So he was probably how long was it before you were at his side? Because I can only imagine as a mother, your instinct would be, I want to be by my baby's side, but probably that was hindering that. And of course, your recovery too, as you said.
Yes. Yeah. I don't even know how long it was. It felt like forever that I don't even remember knowing how long it took for them to release me so that I could actually go downstairs. Thankfully, I had him at the same hospital, so I didn't have to travel or drive anywhere. And he wasn't airlifted. They just took him right there, took him to his floor, and did the surgery immediately. And then I went down to visit him. Yeah, I don't know how much time had lapsed at that point.
And then what? And
yeah.
Now, was he really? No, you just continue with the story because I'm a little flabbergasted. I mean, not flabbergasted, but yeah, it's just this is such an amazing story, and I'm sorry you had to live it, but it's great for people to listen and know what you've been through, and Lennox also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was the next couple days were kind of rocky. We're brand new to this now. We're medical parents. We've got to we're just thrown into it. We got to figure it out. We're trying to advocate for him, but we also don't want to step on anyone's toes. And we also don't know exactly what's going on. So the doctors were doing everything that they could to control that blood pressure, get him off of intubation, and do all of the things that they're amazing at doing. And it wasn't until day 3 that I actually got to hold him for the first time. I remember crying so hard, and while I was crying, my chest and shoulders and everything was moving, and they're like, well, we can't actually give him to you until you stop crying because you're moving too much. Because I think it was either 4 or 6 nurses total in order to get him into my arms, because of all of the different things that he was connected to, and with being intubated and having the breathing tube and everything, there was a lot of Tetris and balance and working around each other that had to happen in order to get him in my arms. And just as a side note, something that has nothing to do with this pregnancy, but my last pregnancy, he actually broke my tailbone on the way out.
Oh, God.
So I'm about to prepare to hold my baby and have to sit in a comfortable position without moving on a broken tailbone that hasn't healed. And so I was very concerned about how long they were expecting me to hold him for without any movement whatsoever. But I was just thankful to actually get to hold him. But yeah, it was day 3 when I actually got to hold my little baby for the first time. So continuing on with the story, as they kind of helped him through that first surgery and recovery, we were preparing for that arterial switch operation, which the initial plan was to be within that first week of life. But because of the kind of struggle he had recovering off anesthesia and recovering from that last surgery, it kind of got pushed back a little bit. And I don't even actually know when that surgery was supposed to take place originally, but we come surgery day, we were staying locally at the Ronald McDonald House so that we could be really close to his room and pop over whenever we needed to. We had decided that we were going to go back to Ronald McDonald and we were going to sleep during surgery because I need to go super fast versus waiting in the waiting room. And they had assured us that, like, we'll call you like every couple of hours to keep you updated. We'll for sure call you at the halfway point and let you know how things are going. And obviously, we'll call you when he's finished and in recovery so that you can make it back to the hospital. And we were only like 4 minutes away, so we were very close. So we did that. We did everything that we could to try to relax enough to actually fall asleep. And we woke up to a phone call thinking it was the halfway point, only for them to tell us that they pulled him off the surgery table and the arterial switch operation is no longer in play because his pulmonary valve was actually smaller than they anticipated it being. And additionally, there was an obstruction outside of the pulmonary valve that they didn't want to mess with without knowing more about it. So we got lucky that he wasn't actually cut open yet, but he did receive anesthesia. So they brought him back to the room and he was still under anesthesia while we were trying to like figure out what the next steps were possibly going to be.
And how long did it take them to come up with the next battle plan?
It took about 2 days, I feel like, because I was confused because we had a plan A and we had a plan B. Like plan A was let's just switch his valves. Plan B was let's use frozen tissue to replace his valves and put them in the right spot. So I was confused as to like, okay, well, if his valve's too small to use and just switch them like you initially had planned, why aren't we just using the frozen tissue like plan B? And that's when they had brought up, they're like, well, because we they said, had we cut open his chest and then found out that the valve was too small to use, yes, that's what plan B would have been. But because they didn't cut open his chest yet, they just really wanted to make sure that they had their next plan like ready to go and all the research behind it and everyone knew what they were doing and everyone was comfortable with it versus needing to panic and do whatever to save the baby.
Now, is this where they started talking about a partial transplant with you then?
Yes. So it was a few days later and they had came in and this is when we got introduced to a new doctor, Dr. Rogers, who had brought up the option for a partial heart transplant and explained, as we talked about earlier, that it's new as of 2022. At that time, there was like less than 45-ish operations that had been done. So there wasn't a lot of like history to go off of. And he explained that the reason that they're entertaining this idea and bringing it up to us is the fact that the tissue is supposed to grow with him as he grows so that it would eliminate all of those future surgeries that we were planning for.
Well, there's at least you got a positive out of it there, but that had to be quite scary to hear those words. And probably, because even I, with a heart transplant for, I don't know how many years now, I know all the patients that I've talked to over the last 2 years we've done this podcast, the first time I've ever heard partial transplant. So you're in a whole new league and a whole new game with a baby. This had to be just nerve-wracking for you.
Yes. We had 20 weeks to prepare the whole plan before it, and now they gave us about 24 hours to make a decision whether we wanted to get on this transplant list or if we wanted to proceed with the backup plan, which was the frozen tissue. So this was a super tough decision because a lot of our questions, there's just not a lot of data to answer them. Like, what are the risks? What are the benefits? What is survival rate? What is his life going to look like? All of these different things. They're like, well, we only have, a handful of people to compare it with and get this information from. But overall, it was very successful. It still is. It's a very successful procedure and option for infants right now and babies and kids. So Yeah, they said that we had about, I can't remember if it was 24 or 48 hours that they needed a decision by. So otherwise we needed to move quickly into plan B.
Now, was that because they had a heart waiting or partial heart waiting, or was it just because of Lennox's condition?
Just because of his condition, we would need to, there's like a whole list of things that he has to like pass a bunch of tests in order to qualify to get onto the waiting list. So they just wanted him to get on the waiting list as soon as possible, if that's the option we were going to be going with.
Okay.
Yeah. And then obviously like his can change at any point. So they have to like continue to watch him and make sure that he's still stable enough to wait. If at any point that would have changed, they went into that plan B with the frozen tissue.
Okay.
But we had given them the go ahead and said that we're comfortable moving forward with getting on this wait list for the partial heart transplant.
Now, being that young, or is there more pieces of the story we need to hear? But I was just wondering, how long did it take for him to receive that partial heart?
Yeah, so one of the questions we had asked is like, where is he on the list? Like, is there like, is he like 84th in the state, or how does that work? And because of the uniqueness of the transplant and that we're only using certain pieces, it all goes based on size. It's like proximity and size and what's available. So being an infant, they said that he would actually probably be called faster than like a toddler or a younger child.
Okay.
Just based on the size. And yeah. So, but they still, that didn't mean anything. It could have been a year, could have been a year and a half, could have been the next day. like they don't really exactly know.
Oh, yeah.
They just anticipated it to be faster than if you were older.
So the $1 million question. So the $1 million question here, how long was it? Or was there other?
We only had to wait 57 days before getting the phone call.
And how were things?
I mean, it felt like a million, because every single day, every time your phone rang and it said like nurse's line or medical or health, your heart just would drop and you're like, oh my God, this is it, this is it, this is it. And it would be like a survey. like, no. So it felt like forever, but 57 days when you think about it, I mean, I have friends that I made in the hospital that are still on a wait list, and it's been over a year. So we're super thankful, but 57 days is when we got the phone call.
Now, how are things during those 57 days? Was things pretty steady for Lennox, or did he have some ups and downs along the way?
Well, they had sent us home and we panicked. We had no idea what we were getting into. Like, it's hard enough. Like, you have your first baby and you're at the hospital and they're changing diapers and helping, like, even though the baby's in the room with you, like, they're doing all these things, and you get home and you're like, oh no, we don't have a nurse to help us do all this stuff. We have to do it now. And now you add on, I can't even tell you how many medications we went home with. I would say 16 to 20 different medications for him. And they were all at different times and different schedules. And in addition, as a heart baby, he also has some other issues going on. So he is fully dependent on a feeding tube in order to feed. And that was like its whole battle itself while in the hospital, because we were he would breastfeed really well, but due to him also having a cleft mouth, so his mouth is wider than the normal mouth. When he would latch onto like bottles, he would have like 2 small holes on each side that couldn't latch. And so he was taking in a lot of air and just struggling overall with eating and feeding, which is normal for heart babies in general, to have to like work really, really hard to feed by bottle, because their heart is not whole, and it takes just a lot of more energy to do all of those things. So he was on a feeding tube, he was on a crap ton of medications, and yeah, we got sent home. And I think the day before we got sent home, his oxygen level dropped and he was like turning blue in the hospital. So when he said the next day that we were going home, we were like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like, how is that even the case? And they weren't sending us home with any oxygen, just a pulse ox machine to kind of monitor his oxygen. But yeah, so when we got home, we had this huge med schedule that we had to follow. We had bolus feeds, so different timed feeds that we had to do through his feeding tube all through the day and night. And the pulsometer machine, we were taking twice a day. And then we had to take his weight twice a day.
Wow.
When we got home, I think that first couple of days, all we did was cry because we were up like 24/7, it felt like, because it takes time to set up the feed. It takes time to make formula. It takes time to turn off the feed and close everything up. And then all the medications were set up for like a 24-hour schedule and not for like living at home and going to bed at night. So that was a complete disaster. So I think that first follow-up appointment that next week, I showed up and I said, we have to change this med schedule because this is not doable for us at home without a nurse. Like, we can't do this. This is too much. And thankfully they worked with us and we were able to adjust meds like 1 hour at a time to get them on a more regular schedule so that all the meds were during the daytime. And then he would still have his set feeds, but that ended up being a struggle as well. And later on, he ends up on being J-fed. So now we bypass his stomach and go straight into his intestines. So he feeds 2 hours a day out of the 24 hours. So it's just a constant slow feed all day long.
Now you finally get the call. Or was
Yes.
there other things we need to know between the time you came home and the calls, or are we ready for getting the call yet?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, we get the call. We're obviously super emotional and excited. I know we videotaped us calling grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles and letting them all know that we got the call. And we were just like, so do we come in right now? And they're like, no. They're like, we'll call you tomorrow and let you know when a room's ready and when you can come in and just start packing your bags and getting ready. And we're like, okay. The next day, we ended up waiting for a phone call and we were packing everything up. And then we went into the hospital when they told us to. And we were supposed to have the surgery that next day. So November 10th was the day that we were supposed to have the transplant. But the government was still shut down. And our surgeon was out at a conference, and I can't remember which state he was in. But both our surgeon and our heart flights got canceled.
Oh, no.
So we were just like, what? Like, how does this even happen? Like, why is our surgeon not here? And we were just like, okay, what do we do now? The surgeon ended up rescheduling for the next morning, and they were able to get the heart there the next day. So his official transplant day ended up being November 11th, 2025. And surgery itself, I think it was like about 8.5 hours. So not super long compared to some, but everything had went smoothly as far as we know. And he did end up coming back, and they prepared us that he would possibly come back with an open chest just because of the swelling and how he's still like a young little infant, that they don't want to close the chest and squish his heart and all of the tissue there. So they usually keep it open to let the swelling go down for a few days, and then they'll close the chest. So they prepare you for that. And he did, in fact, come back with an open chest for recovery. Yeah, it was a lot. And I will say this too. So when we were first preparing, we had 20 weeks to prepare, but went like every day in the hospital and waiting for surgery and going into that first surgery that didn't end up happening, it always kind of just like felt negative in a way that like we just kind of always felt like something was wrong with our baby and they have to do this to keep our baby alive. And it felt, I don't know any other word to use besides negative. It just like didn't feel good. But when we were on the wait list and we were back at home and we're getting in the rhythm, and then we got the phone call, like it was just more positive this time. We're like, yay, like this is what we wanted to happen versus like something's wrong with your baby and this is what needs to happen. So going into this transplant surgery, us as mom and dad and just like the family support in general, like it just felt more positive, if that makes any sense. Like,
yeah, you saw a light is basically.
It was happier. Yeah. So like being in the hospital and seeing him in recovery, it was just a little bit easy. I mean, I'm also like not freshly postpartum at this point, so that helped a little bit. But it just felt like that's what he needed. I'm so glad he finally had his surgery, and now we can, focus on recovery and move on from here.
So how long, obviously, like you said, he may be, going through a little rejection, but how was recovery for the young man?
We had the surgery on November 11th and we were discharged December 22nd, right before Christmas. So he did struggle with coming off anesthesia again. It took longer and he ended up getting pneumonia and some other like bacterial or viral things while he was under anesthesia. And so it was a rough road with getting him off the breathing tube, which was very hard to watch when your baby's crying and he's not actually making noises. Mm-hmm. And like it's just like the loudest silence and your heart just breaks. Knowing that, he can't really even move and he can't cry, but he has tears coming down. So, he's crying. It was so hard to watch. But when that breathing tube, when they were finally able to remove that, night and leaps and bounds he made. They were sitting him up and they were like clearing out any saliva and etc. in his lungs to get rid of that pneumonia and anything else that he had going on, and helping with all of the therapies and coming in to sing to him. And he is the biggest smiler, so he just loves people and interacting with people and their faces, and he just wasn't into toys. They tried so many toys, and I'm like, honestly, if you just look at him and smile, like that's what's going to get him to light up and get him moving and get him motivated. So after he had the surgery and the breathing tube and everything came out, that's when he really started to show his even more strength, that he's got this, like, my heart's fixed, Mom, like I can do all these things now. So when we got home right before Christmas, he was a normal baby besides the fact that he's connected to a feeding tube all day. He, now is holding his head up. He's almost sitting up on his own. He's starting to try crawling. He does physical therapy, occupational therapy. He does all normal things. He's teething. He's got 4 teeth now. He's experimenting with puree foods. So we're trying to really work past that oral aversion that he has. He loves people. He interacts with songs and he's still smiling every single day, bigger than ever.
Awesome. And the anti-rejection, are they working with meds, or they just wait until they do the next heart cath or? Yeah,
so randomly at one of his echoes, because obviously he's going to have echoes for the rest of his life where they're going to monitor his heart. They had noticed that his pressure in his pulmonary valve had increased from his baseline of 35 to a 65. And they're assuming that was rejection, that the valve essentially is not actually growing with him like it's supposed to. And what they did, we stayed at the hospital for 3 days, and they gave some steroids, and they adjusted his rejection meds to increase the amount of the rejection meds to see if we can kind of like slow the process or stop it from rejecting. So we are currently in the waiting period to figure out if in fact is actually helping him or not. If not, I think they're talking about doing a possible stent, but we don't actually know what the plan is if we go in on June 1st and find out that it is still rejecting. Which is really hard to hear because he is not showing any visual signs of struggle.
Well, that's good.
So it's nice because I'm not like crying every day because, you know, he's not hurting or in pain or struggling. Like he's being his happy, healthy self. But it is hard to hear that, like, wait, what? It's not working? Like, I think the whole point of this was that it was supposed to grow with him. So I guess only time will tell as to what happens here.
Well, you know, I know they're doing a lot of things with rejection these days to get it under control. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and a prayer out for you, for Lennox, because
thank you.
But man, he's a warrior. There's no doubt about it. I love those little warriors.
Yes.
I mean,
he is doing so good.
Yeah. Besides the rejection, how would you say he's doing at home right now then?
He's literally a normal baby. He's doing great. He loves his 2-year-old brother. Like if DeLuca even like comes anywhere near him, he is smiling and giggling and laughing. And yeah, they have like this beautiful connection between the two. And we like to kind of we think it's adorable. But our firstborn, DeLuca, was born on Valentine's Day in 2024. And he was born with what's called a strawberry birthmark on his left arm in the shape of a heart. Oh. So it's this beautiful red heart on his arm that he was born with. And we used to brag about that in itself. Like, he's born on Valentine's Day and he was born with a heart birthmark. Like, how cute is that? And then when we found out that we were having a heart baby, we started connecting the dots. We're like, oh my gosh, like Valentine's Day, heart birthmark, heart baby. And then we find out that February and Valentine's Day in particular are congenital heart disease awareness month and day. And the cutest part of the story is that after Lennox received his transplant and he started healing, DeLuca's birthmark has started to fade. So it's almost like he was born with the heart that Lennox was going to need.
Oh, that is... You can't get it much better than that, that's for sure. Well, I tell you.
Yeah, it's really adorable.
It's an amazing story, and wish Lennox and you and the family nothing but the very best, and hope it all, you know, I believe with a positive attitude, and you sound like you have one, it's all going to work out great. I think that's half the battle right there. And just keep loving on those kids, and you'll get there, young lady.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing Lennox's story, and I hope it helps another family out there that could possibly be going through the same thing. And I know I've seen a bunch of people that are on the wait list still, and there is hope, and that phone call will come.
And what would you tell those people if if they're listening or if they're around? What would you tell someone with a young child who's waiting for a transplant?
That everything you're going through is normal, and it's okay to have all of your feelings, and that it's all going to be worth it.
Thank you so much, Roxy, for sharing this incredible story with us today about Lennox. And be sure to join us each week for a new heartfelt episode. If you have a transplant story, email us, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, and also don't forget to like and share this episode with family and friends. And we would appreciate that 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Reminder, my memoir, More Parts Than a Chicken Nugget, isn't just a medical story. It's a survival story filled with humor, hope, and heart. It'll make you laugh, maybe cry, and definitely believe in second chances. Get it now on Amazon. More Parts Than a Chicken Nugget. Another podcast you might enjoy is myself and former morning radio partner Bill Stevens. BJ and Bill, the podcast, all on the Podcast Playground Network. And we want to thank them for making this podcast possible. Until next time, I'm BJ Odom. Thank you for being part of our journey and reminding us all to appreciate each and every day and to treasure the extraordinary gift of life.